What's up, Tailgaters? My name is Tailgate Nate. Welcome back to my channel. Again, I'm back from my long break. I just uploaded my final top 25 a couple days ago. And then today and tomorrow, you're going to get my annual top 10 list of most surprising and most disappointing teams in 2021 and 2022. Obviously, today we're going to start out with the most surprising teams. And then tomorrow, on Saturday, we're going to be going through the top 10 most disappointing teams in 2020, 2020, or in 2021, 2022. It didn't really matter which one I did first, just kind of picked it. But hey, before we get into that, a couple things. The first thing is thank you guys for the support on the channel. Thank you for clicking on this video if you did. And hey, please like, comment, subscribe, do anything you can to help support the channel. I know not everyone can, but if you can, that would mean a lot to me. I really want to try to get this channel as big as possible. And second thing is this is the top 10 most surprising team in 2021. But there's one team that might surprise a fair amount of people is not on this list, and it's this team right here. The team of the jersey I'm wearing. This is a Desmond Ridder, number 9, Cincinnati jersey, and they are not on this list. Now, the reason they're not on this list is because, while yes, they were a surprise. They went 13-0. They made the college football playoff only to lose to the hands of Alabama. In the offseason, or last offseason, I had said that, well, if Cincinnati wins all these games, then they should be in the college football playoff. And it wasn't a huge surprise to me that when they ultimately did win all of these games and they ended up making the playoff, it was not a huge surprise to me at all, especially with the way things shaked out this season. But definitely a team I had in mind to be on this list. But if I had a number 11, they probably would be number 11. First group of 5 team to make the college football playoff, but they're not on this list. Let's go ahead and kick it off with teams that are on this list. You see a couple of them right here, but we're going to start off with this one right here. A pretty interesting one here in Oklahoma State. So the Cowboys were the Big 12 runner-up, and they were that close to going to the college football playoff. Literally that close, inches away from winning the Big 12 title game against Baylor. They were 8-3 last year with a 6-3 record in Big 12 play. And then, of course, in 2021, this year they went 12-2 and were the Big 12 runner-up with a 9-1 record in conference play. That's including the Big 12 title game. Couple reasons why they were so surprising. Look at the numbers for Jaylen Warren. Didn't really come on that strong at the beginning, but Oklahoma had a lot of troubles with the running back position at the beginning of this year, and Jaylen Warren, the transfer from Utah State, put up big numbers for this Oklahoma State team. 256 carries, 1,216 yards, and 11 touchdowns. He was fantastic for them. Of course, the passing game wasn't as good as it has been under Spencer Sanders. This was a nice backup game in Jaylen Warren out of the backfield. The offensive line and sack prevention was through the roof for Oklahoma State. Not a group that was going to jump out to you at the beginning of the season, but this, at the end of the season, I can confidently say it was one of the best offensive lines in college football last season. They only allowed 16 sacks all year, which was tied for 6th fewest in the nation. So great job by their offensive line. And what more can we say about Jim Knowles' defense? 87.6 rushing yards per game allowed. That was 5th in the nation. Passing yards per game allowed, 210.2. That was 36th in the nation. Points allowed per game, only 18.1. That was 9th in the nation. And they were tied with the Alabama Crimson Tide for the most sacks in the nation over this past season. An absolutely fantastic season for Oklahoma State. We'll see if they can continue going into it next year. But, of course, with Knowles leaving, that defense might not be as good. But what more can you say about this team this year? They were truly amazing. Not a huge jump in terms of wins, but a huge season for this Oklahoma State program. They get number 10. Number 9 is the Utah Utes. Now, what's keeping this Utah team from being a lot higher are the total 4 losses. That's what's keeping Utah from being higher. But all in all, this was a fantastic team in 2021. They went 10-4, 9-1 in Pac-12 play, including 2 wins over Oregon. They were Pac-12 champs. Went 3-2 in 2020, so a huge improvement. Again, the Pac-12 season was it was really short last year. But the reason Utah was this good, physicality. They were physical all year long, especially at the line of scrimmage. Let's just look at the sack numbers here. Fewest sacks allowed. They were 3rd in the nation. They only allowed 13 sacks all year long, did that offensive line. And then the defensive line had a total of 42 sacks, and that was 7th in the nation. So really physical guys playing at the line of scrimmage. Cameron Rising, in my opinion, kind of saved the season for this Utah team. So if you remember, Utah started out with Charlie Brewer, the transfer out of Baylor. He has since entered his name in the transfer portal. Not really a whole lot of news on him up to this point. But 1-2 as a starter at Utah. Losses to, of course, San Diego State and BYU, two teams that went to have pretty good seasons of their own. But then came along Cam Rising, and no one was really sure what this guy was going to do. He was flawless. He was excellent. You see his stats right there: almost 2,500 yards, a 4-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio, almost 600 yards rushing with 6 rushing touchdowns. Terrific season for Cam Rising. He'll be the starter moving forward, we would think. And then Tavion Thomas, the running back, coming on as well. He was fantastic down the stretch for this Utah team. Came along kind of mid-season as well, but 21 rushing touchdowns on the year for Tavion Thomas. He should be one of the premier backs next year in college football. And then what more can we say about All-American linebacker Devin Lloyd? You see his stats down there: 111 tackles, led the team, 8 sacks, 6 passes defended, 4 interceptions, 2 pick sixes. There's not much more I can say about this Utah team. They were fantastic. Went to their first ever Rose Bowl, were Pac-12 champions, a terrific season for Utah. And again, if they did not lose those 2 games against San Diego State and BYU, probably could have talked about Utah replacing Cincinnati in the college football playoff. But the 10-4 record's keeping them from being higher than 9th, but definitely a little bit of a surprise team nonetheless. Number 8 is Utah State. And this was probably one of the bigger surprises this year, but of course they're lower on this list because I feel like teams ahead of them were just more of surprises. But they were 1-5 in 2020, and nothing really could get going for this Utah State team, but they come back 11-3 this year, 7-2 in Mountain West play, including a Mountain West Conference championship. Reasons why? Logan Bonner. He was fantastic. The transfer from Arkansas State threw 430 passes, completed 263 of them for just over 3,600 yards, 36 touchdowns, 12 interceptions. Was one of the highest in terms of interception numbers, but hey, 36 touchdowns, hard to argue with that production. And his favorite wide receiver, Devin Tompkins, what a breakout season this was for him. He had 102 catches for 1,704 yards. Amazing year for Devin Tompkins, and 10 touchdowns. But Logan Bonner had weapons all over the field. Brandon Bowling, Wright even. Bowling had 10 touchdowns, and Wright led the team with 11 receiving touchdowns. So lots of weapons for Logan Bonner out there. And how much improved did this defense get? Very much so improved. When you look at their rush game, their rush defense and pass defense in terms of yards per game there in 2020, they were allowing almost 490 yards a game. Now, when you compare it, they're allowing just under 400 yards a game. So very good turnaround here for this Utah State team. We'll see if they can continue to get there moving forward, but a great season for the Aggies nonetheless. Moving on now, the Pittsburgh Panthers we find here in 7th. They were 6-5 last year, 5-5 in the ACC, including a bowl game, and then including, I believe, a non-conference or bowl game win. I forget what happened. But this year, Pittsburgh was fantastic. Pitt went 11-3, 9-1 in the ACC, and were ACC champs. Notice, though, there is the team they played. They are to come. But Kenny Pickett had a Heisman-like year. Of course, he was a Heisman finalist. He better have been in New York. 4,300 yards, 42 touchdowns, only 7 interceptions, along with 5 rushing touchdowns as well. And he had one of the best wide receivers in all of college football, who ended up winning the Biletnikoff award this year, in Jordan Addison. 100 catches for almost 1,600 yards and 17 touchdowns. And this Pittsburgh defense was 2nd in the nation in sacks. They had 54 sacks on opposing quarterbacks. Of course, the teams that are in first place are previously mentioned Oklahoma State and Alabama. You can't say more about this team. Kenny Pickett was amazing. And I kind of expected Kenny Pickett to have a good year. I did not think he was going to have this good of a year. Of course, everyone knows how dangerous Jordan Addison is. I think the real surprise this team, though, was the defense, leading the ACC in sacks. They were 2nd in the nation all around. This was a fantastic year for Pitt. Tough way to end it in a New Year's Six bowl game with the loss to Michigan State, but a fantastic year for Pittsburgh nonetheless. Number 6 here is Arkansas. They went 3-7 in 2020, and everyone kind of thought, okay, this team is taking some steps forward, and I think a lot of people thought this Arkansas team was going to be right around bowl eligibility last year. I don't think anyone saw this coming. They went undefeated in non-conference play, including a huge win over the Texas Longhorns, which didn't prove to be that great of a win. let's be honest, you'll probably see Texas tomorrow, or I can say for certain you will see Texas tomorrow in my most disappointing teams video. But Arkansas absolutely deserved a spot on this list. They were third in the SEC West. Again, they have to compete with Alabama and Texas A&M in that division, but also Ole Miss in that division as well was pretty darn good. And they even beat Texas A&M this year. But when you look at Arkansas, they were 9-4 overall with a bowl game win against Penn State. Why? KJ Jefferson. The stat line is not going to jump out at you. Like, it's not going to make you think, well, this guy's a top 10 quarterback. But he really was a difference maker in a lot of ways for this Arkansas team, was battling through injuries. He showed leadership. He showed poise. A fantastic season for KJ Jefferson. You can look at his numbers down here. And, of course, Treylon Burks. You have to mention Treylon Burks. He was one of the best wide receivers in college football. Probably could be a first-round pick in the NFL draft. If not, we'll definitely go top of the second round, but probably should go in the first round. He had an amazing year for Arkansas. But what really led this team was the insane talent that they had at the linebacking level. Look at it. Bumper Poole, Grant Morgan, and Hayden Henry. All three of them had over 100 tackles on the season, had 100 or more tackles on the season, 326 combined to be exact, and you can see the rest of their numbers down there. That led the way for this Arkansas team, and a huge season for Arkansas as they hope to continue success under Sam Pittman moving forward. They're at number 6. Now, number 5 is Wake Forest. Pittsburgh was a surprise, yes, and they were ACC champs. And of course, anyone besides Clemson to win the ACC this year, or even North Carolina or Miami, was going to be a huge surprise. But Wake Forest coming in here, no expectations given to Wake Forest whatsoever. And they were the ACC runner-up. They were 4-5 in 2020, and they turn it around. Same record as Pittsburgh. They go 11-3, 7-2 in the ACC. Of course, that includes the ACC title game. Why? Sam Hartman, spectacular season. Yes, that completion percentage is not great, but threw for over 4,200 yards, 39 touchdowns, 14 interceptions was some of the again one of the highest numbers in the nation as well. But Sam Hartman, definitely, in my opinion, a sleeper Heisman contender moving into next season. Also had 11 rushing touchdowns. You can't argue with that. So a combined 50 total touchdowns responsible for Sam Hartman. That is a mark of a really good season. And then he had some weapons out there. A.T. Perry and Jaquari Roberson were on fire this year. Both of them had 71 catches. Both of them are 1,000-yard receivers. But, of course, Perry almost had double the amount of touchdowns that Jaquari Roberson did. But both of these guys were absolutely fantastic for Sam Hartman. And while the defense for Wake Forest was not that great in terms of yardage, they allowed a lot of yards. In fact, over 400 yards a game this year. They were tied for 4th in the nation with 29 forced turnovers, which is how Wake Forest offense could get into such good field position, right? They were forcing the short fields. The defense was forcing turnovers, and while they necessarily, if they didn't force turnovers, weren't stopping people, when they did force turnovers, their offense would take over. This was one of the best offenses last year as well. So Wake Forest showing up on this list at number 5. When we move on here to number 4, I had to put UTSA on this list. I've seen so many lists out there that I know they were recorded a lot earlier than mine, but I've seen a lot of lists out there that is not giving UTSA the respect that it deserves. And I think UTSA needs to be on this list. They were Conference USA champs, posting a record of 7-5 in 2020, but just the way they burst onto the scene this year, I absolutely loved this UTSA team. I loved watching them. I thought they were so much fun to watch, and I said it all year long. This was the most underrated quarterback, running back, wide receiver trio in the entire nation. You had Frank Harris at quarterback. Just look at those numbers. Those numbers are fantastic. Sincere McCormick, one of the premier running backs in college football, had almost 300 carries on the season. And then Zachary Franklin, a very overlooked wide receiver, was a 1,000-yard receiver this year who caught 81 passes from Frank Harris. He was amazing. You can look at the stats there. But along with that, the defense, forcing turnovers. They recovered 13 fumbles and forced 12 interceptions, which, of course, would have been some of the tops in the nation, forcing 25 total turnovers. So a fantastic year here for UTSA. Of course, giving Jeff Traylor that huge contract extension. We'll see if UTSA can continue this success moving forward, but I like the direction that this UTSA team is heading towards. If they can maintain this level of success, I don't necessarily think they will, But again, if they can, it is going to definitely be something to behold. But UTSA winds up number 4 on this list. All right, at number 3 here, we have the Michigan State Spartans, who wound up being the third place team in the Big Ten East, of course, behind Michigan and Ohio State. You'll see one of those teams later up on this list. But what a turnaround for Mel Tucker at Michigan State. Looked like, maybe Mel Tucker had his work cut out from Michigan State, did pull off the upset last year against Northwestern, but went 11-2 in 2021. And what a story this team was all year long. Was a team that a lot of people doubted, including myself coming into the season. I know a lot of people thought they were going to be pretty decent as well, but I don't think anyone expected this to happen. Definitely, I was one of the people that did not give Michigan State the credit that it deserved, and now I'm here giving them the credit it deserved. They were the third most surprising team in 2020, and as the season went along, I started to believe more and more about this team. The only thing was their pass defense was not good. Just throwing their pass defense was not good. But as you see at the bottom, their rush defense improved. We'll get there. The biggest story of Michigan State season, Kenneth Walker, a 1,600-yard rusher who ran for 18 touchdowns, could have been a Heisman finalist if that game against Ohio State had gone maybe a little bit differently, but Kenneth Walker was one of the premier players in college football, the transfer from Wake Forest. And then the 2 wide receivers there, Jaden Reed and Jalen Naylor. Now, if only Jalen Naylor would have stayed healthy for the rest of the year, I believe he's coming back next year, so we'll see what happens. But they were one of the premier wide receiver duos in the nation, of course, combining for just over 1,700 yards and 16 touchdowns. And as I mentioned, their pass defense in the secondary was not good this year. In fact, it was one of the worst in football, but the rush defense improved significantly from 2020. You can look at the numbers down there, but Mel Tucker, this is the expectation now. They've given him a huge contract extension worth a lot of money. So we will see if Michigan State can continue to perform at this high of level. They're getting a lot of transfers from the portal. So we'll see how Michigan State responds after going 11-2 with the New Year's Six bowl game win in 2021. Michigan State winds up number 3 on the most surprising countdown. Number 2 is Baylor, which means you guys probably know who's at number 1 by now, but Baylor tied a record along with the team you're going to see here at number 1. They tied a record for the biggest turnaround in college football history. They were 2-7 last year in 2020, only 2 wins. 2 wins. They were one of the worst teams in the Big 12, and in 2021, they exploded. They are Big 12 champs. What a season it was for the Baylor Bears. A couple of things that contributed to this. How about Abram Smith year? 257 carries, 1,600 yards just over, along with 12 rushing touchdowns. He was phenomenal. The quarterback play was not the best for Baylor this year, but one thing was a constant for sure. You knew Abram Smith was going to have a big day every time he stepped on that field. He was fantastic for Baylor all year long. And Baylor, especially on the defensive side, kept what was working and fixed what wasn't. You look at their pass game defense here, pretty similar numbers. Yeah, there's a little bit of a decline in that stat in 2021, but look at the improvement in the run defense. It was spectacular. The Baylor front 7 improved tenfold from last year under Dave Aranda. The pass defense, of course, as well, was still doing its thing. Ball hawking defense definitely could get a hand up there as well. And then they capped off with the New Year's Six bowl game win against Ole Miss. So a fantastic season for Baylor. I finished them number 5 in my top 25 poll that I released just a couple days back, I believe on Tuesday. So what a season it was for Baylor, but definitely by far the most surprising team in 2021 were the Michigan Wolverines. What more can you say about this team? Jim Harbaugh saved his job. Michigan was Big Ten champs, also had 2 wins and went 12-2 in the regular season, including a Big Ten title, and finally broke the streak against Ohio State. They had lost 8 straight prior to this year. Couple reasons for that. Hutchinson, Ojabo, and the pass rush. They were insane. The combined numbers for Hutchinson and Ojabo, you see right there, 20.5 tackles for loss, 25 sacks combined for both those guys. I believe Hutchinson had 14 and Ojabo had 11. So huge seasons for both of those guys. And of course, Aiden Hutchinson going to be a top 3 NFL draft pick, an absolute beast of a human being. But the defense was not all the story. Yeah, you can say what you want about Cade McNamara. Personally, I think he's a pretty solid quarterback. But Hassan Haskins and Blake Corum were elite this year for Michigan. In fact, in my opinion, probably the best running back duo in the entire nation. You see their respective numbers there. And of course, Hassan Haskins having that 5-touchdown game against Ohio State to really drive that game into the ground, send Michigan to the Big Ten championship game, ultimately into the college football playoff. So the only question for Michigan now is this the standard? Because you've beaten Ohio State now. That was the one thing that was kind of holding Jim Harbaugh back, it feels like, right? But they did all of it in 1 year. They beat Ohio State. They made the college football playoff, and they came short of a national championship berth. Is this what we can expect from Michigan moving forward, or will they decline next year? You'll have to find out what I think later this offseason. But that definitely has to be the most surprising team. What a season for the Michigan Wolverines, honestly. And I say that as one of the biggest Ohio State fans you will ever meet. It was honestly kind of fun watching Michigan get back and looking like their old selves again with a 12-2 record competing for a national title. But that's going to do it for this video. Let me know what you guys think. Tell me if you think Cincinnati deserves to be on this list again. I'm repping the Desmond Ridder jersey right here. Really do like this jersey, by the way. But again, comment below your list. Anything else you'd like to say in the comment section below. Like, subscribe, share the video. Anything you can to help support the channel does mean a lot. But the most important thing I want you to take away from this video is whatever life throws you, just remember to play hard, but tailgate harder. I will see all of you guys tomorrow when I upload my top 10 most disappointing teams of 2021. See y'all then. Goodbye.